Hey, och välkommen, and welcome to Global Payfest 25. I'm Natalie Doyle, I'm Customer Success Manager at JGA Recruitment, and we're here in Sweden for the final stop in the European part of Global Payfest. Sweden offers one of the most employee-centric and technologically advanced payroll systems in the world. They've got strong union influence, high tax transparency, and a generous social safety net. So payroll here demands an understanding not just on numbers, but on people and policy. Today, I'm joined by Lisa McKay. She's Associate Director of Human Resources at Go Global. She is a true HR professional. She's got broad experience supporting organizations across industries and across jurisdictions. Can never say that one. As Associate Director of HR at Go Global, she plays a key role in shaping people's strategies that drive engagement, drive performance, and drive growth. Go Global, they're the leading professional services company that guide, establish, and manage global operations with compliance and confidence. They really do bring the human touch to entering new markets and consolidating vendors through a single point of management. It's another reason why they're so perfect to host our Swedish session, where employees and people are such a big part of the payroll. So there's literally no one better than Lisa to lead this session. She's known for a collaborative approach. She's known for strong relationship building skills, and she has a real commitment to fostering like a high-performing, values-driven workplace. She brings heaps of expertise in employee relations, change management, talent acquisition, performance management, and L&D, and really focuses on aligning HR practices with business objectives. So, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. I'm absolutely delighted to have you here today. Can you start by telling our audience just a little bit about your background and your experience working with Swedish payroll?
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you for a glowing introduction, and thank you for putting together this event. I think it's something that's really unique, and it's something that's really important. I know how hard payroll professionals work. It's the basic requirement of employees, really, that they get paid correctly and on time. And payroll professionals really work hard to make sure that that happens. So I think that this is a great initiative in recognizing those efforts by payroll professionals. So, as for me, I'm Canadian originally. I lived in the UK for 23 years. I moved there when I was 19, and started working in HR. And then I moved to Sweden 13 years ago now, and worked in HR and also in payroll. And this is a thing with a lot of Swedish companies that I've worked for, because there is such an intertwinement, as you mentioned, of HR and payroll, and the knowledge that you need of both. HR and payroll are often in the same department. So I've worked as HR managing payroll in Go Global. I don't do that, but obviously keep a close eye on payroll and make sure that everything is running smoothly.
Amazing. Thank you, Lisa. And we've touched on this on a few sessions so far today, and I'm sure this theme will continue to pop up throughout the day of really finding the importance in the people part in payroll. Communication is so, so important. At the end of the day, people go to work to get paid. So if something goes wrong or something changes, then the employees need to know. And it's so important to have that communication piece there. And I think this session on Sweden's payroll is really going to dive into that. So I'm super excited. So for all of our viewers, we are going to split today's section into three parts. So if you've seen lots of the sessions already, thank you so much for staying with us. You'll know a little bit about the structure. But for anybody new joining us for this Swedish session, we will start off with an expert overview of payroll in Sweden. We'll then move on to a bit of a case study so that we can see some of those things in action and how Lisa would resolve a situation where there's some payroll errors popping up. And then to top it off, we will have a Q&A, which will address some of the questions we've had in since we launched Global Payfest. So let's get started. Lisa, would you mind running us through the Swedish payroll system?
Yeah, of course. So yes, some of the complexities in Sweden run around a lot of the collective bargaining agreements, But even if you don't have one, there's very, very strong legislation protecting employee rights. And they have a big impact on how we process payroll. And so one of the pieces that I would like to touch upon today is the vacation law, um, known locally as Semesterlagen. Um, yeah, I've encountered issues with international companies who have global policies around what they see as benefits. And for example, one of these is usually you cannot save or carry over vacation from year to year. Even if an employee signs in Sweden to say that they agree with this policy, these strong laws protect how we treat vacation. It has significant impacts on payroll. So this is why in international operating environments, Go Global offers such an important service. We have local subject matter experts who speak the local language, are seasoned professionals in their fields. They understand the context behind practices and the real life risks of non-compliance in terms of payroll, employment, and even entity management. So, yeah, as I said already, in the first two companies I worked for in Sweden, payroll actually fell under my remit as HR because the two functions are so intertwined. So, yeah, if we talk about Semesterlagen, first in Sweden, we earn vacation 1 year to take it into the next, and the vacation year runs from 1st of April to 31st of March. So does this mean if you join a company, say on 1st of April, you don't have any vacation to take during the first year? No. You're entitled to take vacation. It's called advanced paid vacation, which in Swedish is Forskottssemester. How much an employee can take of this Forskottssemester depends on when they join the company. If they join between 1st of April and 31st of August, they have 25 days of vacation that they can take until 31st of March the following year. If they join 1st of September or after, they have just 5 days of advanced vacation. These days are paid as normal, but they're registered as a debt with the company. That debt is wiped off after 5 years of service is reached, but it's offset against owed vacation if an employee leaves before they complete 5 years of service. And there's also a split between the vacation entitlement as well. The entitlement is 25 days for non-exempt employees, so those who are paid overtime, and it's 30 days per year for exempt employees. So I'd like to share my screen with you for just a moment, give you a quick illustration of what that vacation tracking can look like. So bear with me one moment while I just share the screen and bring up the slide. Here we go. Just took a little minute to figure things out. So here we go. Here is the slide. So we have Anna, an employee who joined us 1st of April this year. So as I said, Anna does not have any vacation entitlement earned because she's just joined us, but she can take Forskottssemester, and she's entitled to 25 days. So you can see here, and normally in Go Global, we wouldn't be tracking it this way in an Excel spreadsheet. I want to say just did this for the purpose of illustrating this. So as you can see, in April to March 2026, Anna is earning her vacation at 2.5 days per month. She decided to take the Forskottssemester. She took 10 days in July, and she's taking 5 days in December. So total of 15 days. So you can see that's sitting as a debt now of 15 days. In 2026, Anna has the full 30 days of vacation entitlement and continues to earn 2.5 days per month for the 2027-2028 vacation year. So again, she takes 10 days in July and she takes another 10 days in December. So she's taken 20 days of her 30-day entitlement. So she is able to save 10 days, and that debt of 15 days still sits there. In 2027-2028, Anna resigns. She gives in her notice. Her last working day is 30th of June 2027. So we actually need to calculate how much does Anna owe the company? How much do we owe Anna? And there's very specific calculations and percentages to calculate this daily rate. So down at the bottom of the slide, and it's important to note as well, even if something was saved in 2025, the vacation payout as part of the final salary is calculated on the employee's salary at their time of leaving. So let's say that Anna earns 50,000 Swedish kroner per month. It's calculated at 4.6% times the 48 days that Anna actually has earned and saved. So we have a gross amount of 110,400 Swedish kroner. On top of this, there is also a semestertillägg, which is the vacation allowance that employees will receive for each day taken once they have fully earned their vacation. And this is something, again, that we need to watch out for in payroll. So this is paid at 0.43% per day. So again, we take 50,000 times 0.43% times 48, and we get the amount. We deduct the advance paid vacation, which is calculated the same way for those 15 days. So I put 10 days, which is 23,000 minus the semestertillägg. The total gross amount owed would be 95,570 if I had got the slide right and put that she had a debt of 10 days. So you can see how this looks, and I'm going to stop sharing now. Sorry for the error in my slide, but yeah, you can see how this looks. And one employee, okay, 95,570 Swedish kroner. Not a huge amount of money, but think about if you have 100 employees in your company, that's almost $1 million that you have sitting in an accrual. And so the company's not happy. This is money that's tied up. So again, this is where HR and payroll are really intertwined if they're working separately, because payroll is tracking this on a monthly basis. Payroll is seeing what this looks like and needs to flag to HR that, look, we have this person taking minimum vacation here, really building up some high accruals. Because then HR wants to, number one, make sure their people are taken care of and make sure that they're taking the breaks that they should be taking, but also protecting the business from having these huge accruals that finance needs to sit on, because we want finance to be our friend as well. So yeah, that's what this would all look like. And I mentioned that employees are allowed to save vacation. So if you have an exempt employee with 30 days of vacation per year, they can save up to 10 days per year or 50 days over a rolling 5-year period. A non-exempt employee with 25 days of vacation can save up to 5 days per year or 25 days over a rolling 5-year period. And then when that upper limit is reached, that balance over this is paid out normally in May following the close of the vacation year. And as I said, the semestertillägg. So once an employee has fully earned the vacation, they will receive that vacation supplement, which is 0.43% of the monthly salary per day. And the payroll system will take care of this, but you need to still check it carefully. You want to do a sanity check. And as you can see from the illustration of Anna, again, huge accrual. Another thing that some international companies don't like to deal with is per diems when people are traveling on business trips. And I agree, it is cleaner and it's easier if employees are submitting receipts to be reimbursed for meals and other expenses. But in Sweden, things are a little bit different. The tax authority, called Skatteverket, publishes an annual list of destinations and what is considered to be the daily cost of living there. When employees travel, their arrival and departure times in that country need to be taken into account, as do things like whether breakfast is included in the hotel rate or whether the employee has had a dinner or lunch purchased for them. This being the case, the per diem needs to be reduced accordingly by a certain percentage. And any meals where only the employee has been present If they're reimbursed on receipt, they're considered a taxable benefit. If they're claimed as a per diem, provided all of the other Scatterverket obligations are met, no receipts are needed and no tax is payable. And for this, it's so important that a business has an expense tool that really can easily manage the Swedish requirements. Because believe me, I have had to manually calculate per diems owed just for 10 employees who were traveling regularly. It's not a fun task on top of everything else that you need to do. And finally, I wanted to point out pension contributions because these can get a bit tricky. And there were a number of international companies who got caught out by this with their Swedish entities many years ago. Now, again, companies may have a global policy that states that company pension contributions are only made on base salary and exclude bonuses and commission. If you have a collective bargaining agreement in place, even if an employee signs to say that they agree with this, it's not the case. So imagine for those companies who were caught out by this, if they had long-term employees with high bonuses, and there's no time limit on the claim that can be made. The employee may have left your employment a long time ago, but they can still come back to you and make a claim. So it costs some companies millions to fix this errors. Now, this applies where you have a CBA. If you don't have a CBA, you can specify that pension contributions, if any, are made only on base salary, but I'd strongly recommend that you be very specific about this in documentation, just to avoid any future disputes. And remember, if you have the CBA applies over any international company policy. So these are just a few things that you can see, the complexity around Swedish payroll. Things as simple as vacation, things as simple as claiming an expense for a meal while you're traveling. And just to confuse matters, there may be different percentages or calculations used for the vacation, depending on whether there's a collective bargaining agreement in place, or even depending on the makeup of your workforce, you could have several CBAs. So you really need that local expertise to make sure that you get your Swedish payroll correct.
Wow, thank you so much, Lisa. There's so much to take in there, so much to break down. I think, well, I said it a few times today, and I'll say it again. It is so important to understand all of that legislation. It's so important to reach out to an expert if there's areas that you don't necessarily understand. Because what I've learned through all of these sessions so far is that getting the tiniest thing wrong can end up in massive fines.
Yes.
So working with experts, working with people like Go Global, like Lisa, it's really going to make sure that you're not slipping up, you're not incurring any of those big fines, and all of your employees are happy at the end of the month. Lisa, I do have a question about the holiday pay or the vacation pay. So obviously in their first year, they can take some days which would be a debt because they need to like accrue it a year in advance. But what if they didn't want to do that? What if they didn't want any vacation debt? Could they work a whole year without taking any holiday? Is that allowed?
Yeah, I mean, they could. I as HR would not recommend that because I think that people really do need that time to rest and recharge. And because you're accruing for the following year, it's very unlikely that you will end up with having to pay a company back, even if you're only with them for maybe a year, because you're earning that vacation month by month, which then needs to be paid out. And I think an important point to note here as well is, I said that you have a debt to the company. Well, that only applies if you resign. If it's a voluntary resignation, if it's a termination, then that debt is automatically wiped out as well. And there is no debt.
Sure. Okay. Totally understood. I think what we won't do there is make sure that you get fired instead of leaving. That won't look
I,
very
I, wouldn't,
convincing.
I wouldn't recommend that either, but each to their own.
So we're going to put a few of those bits into practice now. So we've got a case study to run through. Now, it's for a fictional company, which are a tech company. They've recently opened an office in Gothenburg. They've got 14 employees. So I'm going to share my screen. You're going to be able to see the case study. And then Lisa, if you wouldn't mind just breaking it down for us, that would be fantastic.
Technology.
There we go. So, like I said, Nordtech have opened a Gothenburg office. They've got 14 employees and they're having a bit of issue related to the tax-free benefits, employer contributions, and their monthly tax reporting. So Lisa, they're obviously facing a few challenges here. Would you mind running through these for us and just breaking it down for the viewers?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unravel here. A lot of mistakes have been made, some of which are just a bit of a pain for the company and a pain for the payroll person. Some of the others would actually be painful for the employee as well. So, a little bit more severe. So, if you don't mind, I'm just going to kind of take it point by point, um, because each one is slightly different and has a different solution. Although you may be reporting to the same place. So if we think about having to make these corrections, it is a lot of extra work. But thankfully, if you have a company like Go Global where there is a local Swedish person running your Swedish payroll, um, they can be quickly and fairly easily fixed because all Swedish citizens have a national ID number. And with that national ID number comes a bank ID, which gives easy access to all of the necessary agencies' digital platforms like Skatteverket, who's the tax authority, or Försäkringskassan, who's the social security agency. So, in the case of incorrect employer contributions, this would mean that the incorrect salary data has been reported to Skatteverket. In Sweden, companies are required to report payroll to Skatteverket on a monthly basis through a system which I am going to butcher because Swedish is not my native language. So we're going to refer to it as an acronym going forward, but the system is called Arbetsgivardeklaration på individnivå. So we're going to call it AGI. So this system, you are declaring the employer declarations at the individual employee level. This allows Skatteverket to calculate each employee's tax obligations accurately and in real time. So you're going to report everything every month for each employee. It's the gross salary, it's the benefits, it's taxable reimbursements, pension contributions, deductions such as wage garnishments and withheld tax. So, payroll software that's programmed for the Swedish market will automatically calculate the individual withholding tax and the employer contributions. And, as I said before, a sanity check should be performed before you're submitting the employer declaration. So each month you'll submit this information electronically to AGI via their platform, their digital platform. The deadline for doing this is the 12th of each month, or in the case of a smaller business, and as long as it is filed electronically, it can be the 17th of each month. And it's important that you know what your company's deadline is. Skatteverket will then update each employee's preliminary tax data in real time, ensure that pension and insurance bases are correctly calculated, and they'll pre-fill in income statements in the employee's income declaration. So at the same time, the employer also needs to make the payment of withheld taxes and employer contributions to Skatteverket. In the event that the employer contribution or any other data was incorrect, you can go into the AGI platform, select the month for correction, and update any details needed. If there's been an underpayment of employer contribution, then the company needs to pay that immediately. If there's been an overpayment, every company has an account with Skatteverket. So if there's been an overpayment, that amount will be held in reserve and it will be offset against future contributions. And let's see, the next one was that, yeah, contribution rates weren't adjusted for employees under 25 or 65. So, yep, for those under 25 years of age, the employer contribution rate is 19.73%, up to 25,000 Swedish kronor per month. For those over 65 years of age, it's significantly lower. It's 10.21%. And for everyone in between, it's 31.42%. I would think it would be very difficult for an error like this to happen because the salary system and Skatteverket's own system should notice this. The national ID number that's unique to every individual contains the date of birth, so I would expect this to be flagged. If for some reason it wasn't, again, you'd need to go into the AGI platform and make that correction. Calculate the correction yourself and lodge an updated employer declaration for the individuals affected. And again, likely there's been an overpayment made, so that would be held in the company's account and offset against future contributions. For the misclassification of benefits, this can be an easy one to do. When you're reporting monthly to Skatteverket, you need to include everything. So let's say you have a situation where an employee took receipt of a company car 2 months ago, but they're working somewhere else, payroll, you only found out about that this month. So you've missed 2 months of reporting for the employee benefit taxation and the employer contributions. In this case, the employee is also impacted because they've paid too little tax because their overall income increased, according to Skatteverket, but it wasn't reported. So to correct this, again, Skatteverket, very useful. They have a company car benefit calculator in their system, so you can find the market value of the car for that year and month. Then you would have to update the employee's journal for the affected months. You'll need to recalculate the preliminary tax and the employer contributions and use Skatteverket's AGI platform to make the correction in the correct month for the employee. These will be logged under, there is a tab in Skatteverket's platform called Benefits, which is known in Swedish as Förmåner. The company will need to pay the additional withheld tax and employer contributions, and HR payroll should inform the employee that their taxable income was increased, and the correction will be shown on their annual income declaration. So there's no need to claw anything back at that time, although the employee may ask that you do so. It would be captured in the end of financial year income declaration. Now, there's no legislation stating that you need to inform the employee about this. You could just go and make the correction. I'd strongly recommend that you let the employee know. Be upfront about it. Employees don't like surprises when it comes to, the money that they're getting. Also, don't wait for Skatteverket to find the error. This can carry financial penalties for the companies and again result in a very unhappy employee when they find that they've been undertaxed and maybe owe Skatteverket money at the end of the financial year. And then, wellness stipends and lunch vouchers exceeded tax-free limits, were not reported as taxable benefits. Yep. And this is easy as well. Skatteverket has some very strong regulations around what can be treated as tax-free and what can't. So if you think, if the payment has exceeded the tax-free limit, as with the example of the company car above, the overpayment needs to be corrected in Skatteverket's AGI portal for the affected month and the individual employee under that Förmåner tab. This will be treated as additional income and it's taxed accordingly and subject to employer contributions. And in the case of a wellness stipend, which is known in Swedish as friskvårdsbidrag, the current tax-free limit is 5,000 Swedish kronor per year. Now, this can be claimed as a one-time amount or it can be claimed in increments throughout the year. And it must be supported with receipts because Skatteverket has regulations around what classifies as a claim under Förskottsbidrag. So it's important to track the use per year for tax reporting, and also useful to have a company policy in place around this. Now, let's say that an employee has mistakenly received 8,000 Swedish kroner in the Friskvårdsbidrag. What's important to note here is that once the correction is lodged with Skatteverket, the entire amount, so even the 5,000 Swedish kroner, which is supposed to be tax-free, becomes subject to tax and employer contributions. And late PAYE filings, yes. So if you're having all of these problems already with your payroll, it's highly likely that you might actually have some difficulties issuing those filings in time. So, I mean, yeah, Skatteverket wants you to report on time, which is either the 12th or the 17th of the month, depending on the classification of your company. And it's very important that you get that classification correct. Because if you file the report late, Skatteverket receives an immediate notification as soon as that deadline has passed. At this point, you need to submit as soon as possible via the AGI platform. You can incur a late payment fee of 625 SEK for each declaration for the first time. So that's per employee. 1,250 SEK for each declaration that's late for the second time, and 2,500 SEK for each declaration that's late for the third and subsequent times. Now remember, this fine is per person, and the declarations are done on an individual basis. So the fines could become quite sizable depending on the business. I mean, if it's a one-off, it's not a regular occurrence, and it's only 1 or 2 days late, there is a chance that Skatteverket will waive the fees, but you're very dependent on their goodwill. The rules are very strict here. And then, yeah, monthly pay reports submitted past the 12th of each month for triggering penalties. A little bit same as the late PAYE filings. I mean, if Skatteverket, you could, ask for leniency and say, hey, we were only 2 days late. It's the first time this has ever happened. It won't happen again. They may waive the penalty. If they don't, you have no choice but to pay this, unfortunately. And as I said, it's per individual, so it can become a sizable cost for the company. And then leave pay miscalculations, yes. Because the calculating the leave, the semester tillägg, all of those good things that go with it, that's all great, provided everybody is reporting the leave that they're supposed to. And again, this is where payroll and HR are so intertwined, where they are working as separate functions, because HR should be keeping a track of things, but payroll should also be saying, hey, employee X hasn't taken any vacation over the summer months. That seems a bit odd. But, it can happen, and there can be leave pay miscalculations and payments, particularly where reporting hasn't been done. So, it's so important. And leave payments could also include sickness payments as well, because employees in Sweden, the company stops paying sick pay after the 15th day of sickness, and the employee automatically goes over to payments from Social Security. So if you're not registering the sick leave, as an example, with the Försäkringskassan, with Skatteverket, and doing the reports that you should be doing, you could leave your employee in financial hardship while these mistakes are rectified. In the case of annual leave not being paid correctly, again, the amounts can be recalculated, they can be corrected. Maybe you have overpaid an employee, in which case you do need to claw that money back from them, which is never a fun discussion to have. Or you need to pay out any underpayment. It also needs to be recorded as a correction to Skatteverket on their AGI platform. And, as I said, in the case of not reporting sickness or parental leave to Försäkringskassan, the Social Security Agency, the results can be disastrous for the employee because they're not getting paid by the company. They're relying on money from Social Security. Failure to report causes delays in payment. So if an error is discovered, you need to report this retroactively as soon as possible to Försäkringskassan. Which takes us neatly into the next and the final point. So an employee on parental leave was paid incorrectly due to the misapplication of Föräldrapenning rules. So, as with above, incorrect reporting or misapplication, it causes hardship for an employee. It needs your immediate attention. So, as an example, if as an employer we didn't report that an employee was going on parental leave in Försäkringskassan's system, Social Security just sees that the employee is being paid by the employer. It's up to the employee to then put in their application for Föräldrapenning in Försäkringskassan's system. Well, of course, when Försäkringskassan see this, they're going to deny the claim because they'll say, well, you're being paid by your employer. When this becomes the case, the employer must immediately correct the employee's status with the authorities. They need to go into Skatteverket and go to the AGI platform to correct the salary payment and zero that out for the applicable months. They also need to send a letter to Försäkringskassan confirming this parental leave and that no salary was received by the employee. And I mean, if an error like this is made, it needs to be top priority for this to be sorted out.
Super. Thank you so much, Lisa. I think Tech have definitely faced a few problems with their payroll there. So probably their two best options are to either recruit a really expert Swedish payroll specialist with JJ Recruitment, or reach out to Go Global and make sure that they're working with an expert who knows what they're doing.
Yes.
Proof to the pudding on that one. You don't want any of those hefty fees coming along. So we're going to move on to Q&A. Now, a couple of the questions that have been sent in do touch on some of the areas that we've already covered today. We'll run through those. I think some of those areas surrounding like vacation pay, AGI reporting, fringe benefits, they can be quite tricky to get your head around. Yeah. So we'll run through the questions. I know a few of those bits have been spoken about, but I think there's no harm in digging a little deeper. So sure. Question one is, can we roll up vacation pay into salary in Sweden?
No, it's you can't do it. I guess the question is the semestertillägg, can you actually pay that out as part? Or, like let's take Spain as an example where they have the 13th and 14th month pay, but you can opt to pay that out on a monthly basis instead. In Sweden, no, you really can't, because the semestertillägg is paid out as and when the employee takes vacation. So, if I took vacation in April, those days would be recorded and I'm paid in May, the semestertillägg for those vacation days. So no, not recommended. And I would even struggle to think of a creative way to try and do that would actually be compliant or workable even for a payroll professional.
Sure, thank you. And what is the penalty for incorrect AGI reporting?
I think it more depends. I think it's not necessarily the incorrect AGI reporting, as long as you are reporting this and correcting it as soon as you discover it. And obviously, if you owe Skatteverket any money, to be making that payment immediately. They have, in Sweden, it's not directly related to payroll, but there is an interest law that can be applied to debt. And forgive me, I can't even remember what the amount is, but it's a daily amount. So, if there was an underpayment to Skatteverket, you weren't paying it as a company, Skatteverket could then start applying that interest to you on a daily basis, and it can become sizable as well.
Sure, yeah. I can imagine that can build up pretty quickly.
Yes, very.
Very. So are fringe benefits, all of the fringe benefits, are they all taxable in Sweden?
No, they are not all taxable in Sweden, depending on what they are. So, as we touched on, the wellness stipend, provided it is for a prescribed activity, according to Skatteverket's regulations, provided you don't exceed 5,000 Swedish krona per year, then it can be tax free. So as an example, you can't go out and buy a new pair of skis and send the receipt into the company and expect them to pay that back tax free, or buy a new pair of trainers because well, I'm gonna take up running, so I want you to pay for my trainers. That is not tax free. The company could decide, okay, that's perfectly reasonable, but then that's a taxable allowance. Um, yeah, trying to think what else there would be. Yeah, luncheon vouchers, again, according to Skatteverket's regulations. Everything that you could ever hope to find is in Skatteverket on what is tax free, what's not, and even the per diems have the regulations around that, even though that's not a fringe benefit. So yeah, they're very prescriptive about what is tax free and what's not.
Sure. And you mentioned earlier on during your overview that some of those expenses, we call them, don't require a receipt. Um, why ever not? Because my accounts department would faint if I if I started buying stuff and didn't give them receipts.
I know. And I started my life in Go Global working in the client solutions side in their employer of record service line. And yes, had conversations with clients about that who were not based in Sweden. But yes, Skatteverket has decided on making up amounts here. But let's say I spend 3 days in the UK on business. And Skatteverket has decided that 900 Swedish kroner is an acceptable amount for me to be able to live on for meals, etc. While I'm there and I'm traveling. And yeah, I know that companies have an issue with this because let's say that I don't spend 900 kroner per day. Let's say I eat at McDonald's and I do it really cheaply. Well, that's money in my pocket. And that's what companies kind of object to a little bit. But there really is no way around it. Receipts are not required. Um, as a company, I guess you could ask for receipts, but the employee is under no obligation to provide them, and nor could you say, yeah, but you only spent 600 Swedish kroner, so we're not giving you 900. That's just the way that the legislation stands. So yeah, I guess it can be quite lucrative for some people who are traveling internationally with the per diem system.
For sure. I mean, Lisa, if you're ever in London, come and stay with me. I'll cook you dinner so you can save on
Yeah.
hotel, meals out, and we'll split the 900.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think Skadaverkit has some issues with that,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I can top it up. So, moving on to payments. So, can employees in Sweden be paid bi-weekly?
That's a really good question, and it's not something I've ever encountered. Um, I would say I don't know if there's any legislation around that, to be honest, but it would be so uncustomary that I don't know if an employee would be willing to accept that either. I mean, the national payday in Sweden is the 25th day of each month. So anything outside of that um, would be very, very strange. And I don't, yeah, even if there's no legislation, I don't know if it would be accepted by an employee either, because obviously, when you know that you're getting paid on the 25th day of each month, you set up your direct debits for your mortgage, for all of your bills to come out on either the 25th or the 26th. I think it could create a bit of a logistical nightmare. Um, for yourself as well as payroll and as a company. When you take all of the other bits and pieces of Swedish payroll into account, I wouldn't recommend it. Let's put it that way.
Sure, perfect. Um, and what is the biggest mistake that you see global companies making when it comes to Swedish payroll?
I think in terms of cost, it's the one that I already touched upon regarding the pension contributions. That cost companies millions when that came out, and yeah, because companies thought that they were covered. Yeah, but this person signed to say that they accept that it's only paid on base salary, and a lot of Swedish people and payroll people and everything else thought that this was fine, this was the case, and it wasn't until somebody somewhere came and made this claim that suddenly it became a big emergency for companies. And yeah, looking into it with pension providers and with the unions, with the CBAs, because as I said, it did only apply where there was a CBA in place. Um, yeah, the unions just said, yeah, there's no time limit here on when people can come back and make a claim. Um, and yeah, doesn't matter that they signed or not. You need to include bonuses, commissions, everything in the pension contributions. And under the CBA, the pension contributions were sizable as well. So that was the most costly mistake I've seen. But there's other things where it can just be so easy to actually forget. One of the other things that we have in Sweden is called rörlig semestertillägg. So this is a vacation allowance that is based on bonuses or commissions that are paid. And so what you should be doing is, let's say for the 2024-2025 vacation year, let's say somebody received 100,000 Swedish kroner in sales commission payments. So what you should then be doing is applying 12% to that amount and paying it as the vacation bonus on the one-time payment, the sales commission or bonus. Some companies, especially if it's not a Swedish payroll professional, will not do this. Will overlook it or will forget about it. So again, it can cause unforeseen costs because you do need to make that right, even if it was from last year or the year before. You do need to make that right. And depending on the size of the bonuses and the commissions and how many employees are impacted, it can be sizable.
Sure. Thank you so much, Lisa. I think you've done a brilliant job of sort of like delving deep into some of those really, really tricky areas that seem to be very unique to Sweden.
Yes. Yes.
It's certainly one of the more structured payroll systems in Europe. Definitely very, very employee focused, which I like. I think that's really good. But it definitely requires like quite a good balance of like compliance, transparency, definitely local know-how as well. And as you've been speaking today, probably some language know-how.
Yes.
To be much, much longer. So for everyone who's tuning in, I really, really hope that this has helped you to uncover some of those tricky parts of Swedish payroll. Of course, this and every other session today can be found on demand afterwards. So if you want to revisit this content, if you're expanding in Sweden, if you're already managing a Swedish payroll and you thought, oh my goodness, we're not doing some of that to something that Lisa's spoken about today, or even if you are planning on progressing in your own career, looking to take on new regions, and just want to understand a little bit more to get you ahead of competition, then do revisit. I'm sure Lisa won't mind me saying you can reach out to her, you can reach out to Go Global with any questions at all regarding your Swedish or even global payrolls. Um, and hopefully this will leave you with a little bit more confidence, a little bit more clarity moving forward. Excuse me. Lisa, I do have one final question for you. You
Okay.
truly are a global HR and payroll professional. You've lived all over the world, you've worked all over the world, and now you're at Go Global. And I think, am I right in thinking like 140 countries?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I should know this. I should know this off the top of my head, shouldn't I? I think it's, yeah, with our direct solutions, I think it's 140, 150, but I think, yeah, with working with partners, we're actually 169 or 170 where we're operating.
Wow. So out of those, all of those places, what would you say is the country in which you have found payroll most difficult, or understanding the payroll and the legislation most difficult?
Um, yeah, I mean, I would say all of the Nordics countries can be a little bit tricky. I think France can be quite special as well. Yeah, any country where there's a collective bargaining agreement in place can be a little bit tricky. I'm also, I have such deep respect for people who are working in the US and Canada and some of the South American countries as well, with, all the different tricky bits that they maneuver and, US and Canada in particular, because not only do you have the federal pieces that you need to take care of, you've got the provincial and state pieces as well. So I think every payroll has its own peculiarities and things that you really need to be aware of.
For sure. And I promise I didn't make Lisa say that. But it's perfect timing. After this session, we are actually moving in to the States. So we will meet Sarah Chasney next in the USA with my colleague Tom. We'll then move on to Canada and South America as well. So Lisa, definitely stay tuned for those sessions as well. I want to say thank you again, and I just wanted to ask if there's anything else you would like to say to our audience before we wrap things up.
No, I think just if, yeah, I mean, if you're working in Swedish payroll and you have any questions as an individual, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and we can have a chat. If you're a company that's looking to move into Sweden, or you need some HR advisory or anything, entity management, payroll, please feel free to reach out to Go Global. We have that local expertise that can make sure that you have everything you need to do things well and to do things compliantly.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. Tack. Thank, thank you to our audience. As you know, I've been Natalie Lloyd. This is Lisa McKay from Go Global. This is the end of our Swedish session. So grab a coffee, get ready for our next session where we're heading to the USA to dig into some of those multi-state complexities that you find in America. Bye for now. Hey, do.
Hey, though.